All right. Well, thanks for joining, everybody. Really appreciate it. It's cool to see that we've got lots of new people for Salesforce. Um, this is definitely intended as a introduction to the Salesforce API. We're going to be looking at a demo file that I'm going to have available for everybody. I'll go ahead and put that in Slack at the end of the meeting, so you can kind of continue on with the demo file and integrate it in with any projects that you may have, or if you want to pull apart the scripts and dig into any of the logic or anything like that, it's got examples in it as well. You'll have that available to you. Just as a little introduction for myself, here, actually, I need to move all of you guys off of my, I guess it won't let me. Just as an introduction to myself, I am actually a fairly new FileMaker developer in the grand scope of things. I started back in 2015 when I was working for a nonprofit, and actually before that I was in the horse world. So you guys can see my photo of back in my horsemanship days. I joined SeedCode in 2017 as a full-time FileMaker developer, and I'm currently the project manager for all of our FileMaker and Salesforce custom projects. So with our dayback calendar, which many of you may be familiar with, within the FileMaker ecosystem, we also have dayback within the Salesforce ecosystem. So, pretty well I'm talking to Salesforce customers almost every day. Members of our team are working on Salesforce projects and whatnot alongside our FileMaker custom development. And then very honored to be invited to join the Claris Partner Council in March of this year, along with Kate. And I think Tim is on this call as well, another fellow member of the council, and really excited to be able to contribute further to the FileMaker community and maybe bring kind of a fresh perspective as a relative newbie. In terms of being able to, help provide input and direction and that sort of thing. So the outcomes for today is an introduction to the Salesforce Trailhead, which is basically a training system that Salesforce has that's totally free and can be a really good way to, if you're not familiar with Salesforce, to get familiar with it, to be able to have a Salesforce org, in FileMaker words, a file, basically to be able to do to fully explore in, and they've got educational pathways that you can kind of go through. So we'll talk about that, show you that. It's totally free, which is awesome. And then when you do have a Salesforce org, getting that set up as a connected app to be able to talk back and forth between FileMaker and Salesforce, what that looks like. And then, of course, the authentication in from your FileMaker file, and then taking a look at exploring, querying Salesforce data and bringing that across into FileMaker, and also being able to write data from FileMaker back over into Salesforce. So the Trailhead, I've got this link here. We'll put this into the Slack channel as well. But like I mentioned, it's totally free, and you can have basically sandbox orgs to learn and experiment in, and then it's a self-paced and self-guided kind of educational pathway, and we'll take a look at this closer. But basically, you earn points as you go through different exercises. You earn badges and kind of these little patches as you move forward. So it's kind of a cool way to to be recognized for your educational efforts, and to be able to explore the different areas of Salesforce that you may want to. And where I found this really handy, and what initially drew me to Trailhead, was being able to just have more educated conversations with Salesforce users and developers. So, there's definitely some vocabulary differences between FileMaker and Salesforce, like orgs, for instance. Tables in FileMaker are objects in Salesforce. value lists in FileMaker or pick lists in Salesforce. So being able to just kind of understand the vocabulary and that sort of thing just helped give me more confidence when talking to Salesforce customers and kind of help build that relationship, so to speak. So that was one of the things that really helped me. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and stop the screen share here, or stop the slides here. And let's go ahead and take a look at, I'll move you guys out of the way here. Take a look at Trailhead. So when you set up an account in Trailhead, you can log into it, and you can see that they have basically a bunch of different pathways. So what they consider trails. So trails are kind of a Salesforce, what's the word I'm looking for? Moderated, I guess, kind of set of exercises to go through that kind of focus on a particular topic. So for instance, learning admin essentials is a trail. Sales cloud, so that's going to be kind of more sales focused part of Salesforce, is a trail, and so on. And you can kind of choose a trail to go down, but you can also just pick and choose different topics that may be of interest to you. So I've got a particular one here that I've been working on of customize a Salesforce object, and let's just kind of see what that looks like in Trailhead. So this badge of customizing a Salesforce object, you can see it's broken down into a number of different chunks. And each one of these, they're very small, kind of bite-sized pieces that are easy to kind of do a couple here and there type thing. It's not like having to sit down and spend 4 hours trying to work through these different pieces, and you can come back to them at any time. And when you take a look at one of these, they've got a video, which is awesome. But they kind of give you like a scenario that you're trying to solve. And then it takes you through step by step of how you go ahead and set that up within your org. And with this Trailhead, you have this sandbox, this development org that you can go in and follow along in. So let me actually break this out into another window. So here we are. Here we're in our Trailhead, and here we've got our org, and now we can start to step through this step by step to start to learn how to do this. So go to setup, go to object manager, select account, select validation rules, right? So you are actually doing the work within the org itself and starting to set these up. So I've already done these. So here's this support plan, expiration date required. I've already set that up. So you go through and basically follow the steps and start to get practice and experience moving around within the org, setting up fields, setting up whatever it is that you're focusing on. And after you've gone through all of those steps, down at the bottom, let's see here. Yep, I've already launched this. You hit this button to verify it. And what it does is it looks at your sandbox org. It does some queries, I'm sure, to make sure that you've done all of the steps that are in this piece of the lesson. And when that comes back successful, you get a woohoo, right? This was the last one in kind of this badge. I've got a new badge to talk about, and I've got 100 points added, and I can now move on from this one and go back and start to take a look at any other topics that I might be interested in. So this number just bumped up for me. I just got more points, and I can see where I'm at in my pathway to my to my next badge. So pretty cool. If you are just curious about Salesforce, or you think that you may have customers that you want to be interacting with it, or you're just interested as a developer of kind of expanding your skill set in different ecosystems, this Trailhead is a fantastic way to do that. And like I said, it's totally free, no time limits or anything on it, and you can use this to just fully explore. And they do even have, I just noticed this morning, or was it on here? Yeah, scenarios and flashcards to study for certification exam. So Salesforce does have different certifications that are available and stuff, and that's one of the trails that you can follow along on. So we're going to go ahead and use this my sandbox org here to start looking at communicating with FileMaker, and when you have your sandbox set up, you can be like fully exploring this as well. So even if you don't have a current customer, you've got a playground to basically be playing with it. So the next thing that we're going to take a look at is, what do we need to do within a Salesforce org in order to set it up as a connected app, basically to get an API key, secret, that sort of thing, to be able to communicate to this org from FileMaker. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over into setup, and I actually will have a screenshot of this. And then we're going to put in here, App Manager. And when you're in App Manager, up here, there's an option to do a new connected app. And when you select that, it's going to, you're going to give it a name, anything that you want to name it. And then an email. And it doesn't matter, the name is not dependent on anything. It's just what you're going to be able to recognize it at, or as our Salesforce administrator will be able to recognize it as. And then you're going to enable auth settings. And within these auth settings, there's three of them that we recommend. This chatter one, I don't think you would always need, but it is a part of the demo file that you're going to have, so it won't hurt to add that one. And again, I'll have a screenshot of which ones these are. And then there is a manage user data via API. We're going to add that one. And then perform requests at any time. So this one's really important if you want to have kind of a persistent connection between your FileMaker file and Salesforce, so that you don't need to continually reauthorize back into the Salesforce org for that connection. This allows you to basically have an open, persistent communication between them and via refresh tokens. So you would go ahead and add that. That's basically the setup. I'm actually not going to save this one. I've already got one set up. It does take about 10 minutes from when you create it for that connection to actually become live. I didn't want to sit here and wait for it for 10 minutes. But, otherwise you would hit save, and then it would provide to you there's one other piece that we need to do in here as well. But it would provide to you a client secret and a client ID that you would then copy for your FileMaker solution. The other piece of this that you need, and actually it wouldn't have let me save it anyways because it's a required field, is this callback URL. And that's a specific URL that you're going to want to use. And let me, at this point, go ahead and bring across the demo file that, again, we'll have available for everybody at the end of this. So here in the OAuth tab is where you would put your client ID and your client secret that is created from this process. And you're going to want to use this redirect URI, and basically you can just copy that and then paste that into that field when you're setting this up within Salesforce. So, and if you do have any kind of questions or confusions, clicking on this information button will kind of step you through that, and also talk about those which scopes that you're needing to set up, etc. So that will be there at your fingertips, available for you. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel this, since we already have one. And if we look down here in our list, we can see that there's already been one that's set up for FileMaker, which was using those same settings that we just essentially walked through there. All right. I do not have my Zoom chat window open. Are there any questions so far?
I don't see any so far.
All right. So far, so good. Cool.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, that sounds like Mike.
It is.
Hey, Mike.
Man. So do you need, so as a developer playing around the sandbox, you do not have to pay for a Salesforce account?
Correct. 100% free.
Okay, cool.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, and, I think it's really pretty brilliant on their side, to have basically free sandboxes for people to use. And there is another, I believe that you can also get a free developer sandbox. Actually, we've got it here. You can set up a free account through developer.salesforce.com sign up as well. I don't think that that's associated with the Trailhead. I kind of like doing it through the Trailhead, and so that I have kind of the educational piece of it as well. But we'll include this link in Slack as well. And again, it's in this file. But yeah, it's a free account that you're able to use and explore. So. And as far as I know, there's absolutely no restrictions. I mean, you can't put it into production and start adding a bunch of users and stuff, right? But other than that, like, the functionality of it is a one-to-one experience of what you would have as a Salesforce user in a Salesforce organization. So here in this demo file, and I know Soliant also has a Salesforce demo file I saw when I was kind of doing some Google searches and that sort of thing. So, if you prefer one over the other, that's fine. But basically, you're going to put in your client ID and client secret. And then you'll hit authorize, and you'll just have to provide your login to the Salesforce org, and then you're off and running. So let's start to take a look at now how you start to get information out of Salesforce and over into FileMaker. So there's a couple of tabs here that I want to look at specifically, and we're going to kind of take a look at this too side by side with our Salesforce org open, so that we can also kind of see and verify data back and forth quite easily. But one of the tabs that I want to bring your focus to here first is this reference tab. And if you don't have a full login into a Salesforce org, maybe it's just an API license that's allowing that connection, then you can still kind of query Salesforce to get the applicable information out of there, the structure, the data structure out of Salesforce. So this is pulling all of the objects that are in this Salesforce org. And again, objects are equivalent to tables in FileMaker. So this is a list of all of the objects that are in here. And if you click on one of them, you can then see all of the fields that are in that particular object. So if we were to go over here into setup, go to object manager, click on account, and go to fields and relationships, we can see all of the fields listed here. And those are the fields that we're seeing here within FileMaker, basically pulling that data across. So that is going to be very important to be able to know field names and that sort of thing that you're going to be potentially wanting to query, or that you're going to want to be writing to. So you have that available to you directly within this FileMaker demo file within the FileMaker interface to be able to query that data if you're not don't have access or are not comfortable kind of poking around in the setup of a Salesforce org. A couple of things to note is Salesforce objects typically kind of come prepackaged. So like an account is one that just automatically gets created when you start up a Salesforce org, and it comes with a number of fields that are kind of prepackaged as well. But then you can add new custom fields that you want. And anytime you have custom fields in Salesforce, they're appended with this 2 double underscores C. So you can see that these are custom fields that have been added into this org that are not kind of part of the stock account object. So just kind of a notation there. The other thing is that you can look through relationships, between the objects, just like in FileMaker. But what it uses is kind of this dot notation. Looking from asset to account. So this is noting a relationship between assets and accounts. And so when you're querying the data, you're going to use this dot notation to kind of specify a particular relationship that you may be looking through. So what the heck does that even start to look like? Let's take a look. So over here in the query tab, so this, when we want to extract data from Salesforce into FileMaker, we're going to be doing a query. And brush up on your SQL skills. They call it SOQL, S-O-Q-L, probably Salesforce Object Query Language. But essentially, SQL, we're going to be building SQL queries to query Salesforce through the API to get a JSON result back. So this is an example of just a very basic query. We want to get the ID, name, phone, and shipping city from accounts. And if you click this little button here, that will show you the returned results that the API has sent back in JSON format. So if we go over here, and actually, let's go back over here. And let's go to accounts. And let's look at all of our accounts. And the first one that was returned is this edge communication. We can see the phone numbers coming across. Shipping city, if we go ahead and take a look into this particular record. Oh, I'm unrelated. Let's go to details. We can see the shipping city is Austin. That makes sense, and so on. So it's just kind of a little verification that we did get the right data back from the org that we're looking at, just to make sure that you guys are convinced that we're actually talking to it through this. So that's a very simple, kind of example of that. But let's say that we want to now experiment with getting something else. Let's see if we can pull the industry through on here. Now, I might not know what that field name is. It's labeled industry. I don't know if the field is actually called industry or not. Let's go in here. Let's take a look. Oh, it's not. What did they call it?
I think you're on the relationships tab.
Oh, I am on the relationships. Well, no wonder. Thank you. There we go. Yeah, so it's just called industry. Okay. So if we go back to our query, we can go ahead and copy this existing query here. And we can go over to our wizard and we can go ahead and paste that in there. And instead of shipping city, let's put industry. And let's run that query. And now we can see that for edge communications, the industry is electronics, which is what we would expect to see there. So having kind of these templates to use and then being able to copy those and put them into the wizard for testing, and experimenting with your own queries is pretty cool. So that's a pretty simple one. Let's go ahead and take a look at another query of selecting a bunch of fields from account, but putting in a where statement where we're going to be looking for names like uni. So if we go back to the accounts and take a look at these all accounts, we can see that we've actually got probably 4 of them that are going to meet this criteria: United Oil and Gas, 3 of those, and then University of Arizona. And if we go ahead and hit that, we can see that those are being returned. So again, it's just being returned in JSON that then you can parse apart within FileMaker using all of your great JSON skills to then parse that information into the appropriate location within your file and within your fields. Let's go ahead, just for fun, let's go ahead and copy this one. Oops, I didn't do it. I didn't say yes to that. Let's go ahead and copy this in. And let's narrow this one down a little bit. I didn't want all 4 of those. I wanted only something that was university. And let's go ahead and run that one. So now we just get that University of Arizona one back. So, as you kind of step through each one of these tabs, it's just going to kind of start to build and grow that SOQL statement that you're putting together of starting to be able to do group buys, ordering, and so on. As I said, you'll have this demo file that you can go ahead and kind of pull apart a little bit, but just let's just take a quick look at script debugger when we go ahead and run this query. And I'm just going to jump down to, so basically this first part is just building the URL that we're going to be sending this call to. And if we take a look at that in data viewer, and take a look at what that URL that we have built is which org we're accessing, which version of the API, what type of API call we're doing, which is a query, and then basically it's just that SOQL statement is being built as part of that URL call that we're making over to Salesforce. And then the next piece of it is building the curl piece of it, which if we blast through that and then take a look at the curl of this, there it is. Pretty straightforward for queries. It's basically just your authorization or your access token is just being sent as part of the curl. So it's actually, making these queries over. The hard part really is just kind of building that statement that you want to be extracting out the appropriate information that you need from the Salesforce org. So that's about what there is to it. So just kind of looking at these, you can query kind of based on scope, like who, whether they're your records or your territory or team records, etc. You can query views. So you may have noticed over here, we've got some different views that you can take a look at. Basically a list view. You can kind of see those views through that query. This is where we're starting to build through relationships, right? So for a contact, from the context of contact, I want the name and email of that contact. And then I want their parent account's name and shipping city. And so this would be an example of, starting to look at through relationships from a child up to a parent object. And then you can also do this looking for children. This one is starting to get quite a bit more complicated, but what we're taking a look at is from an account. Let's take a look at one of these. So from an account, you'll see that there's this related tab here. So from this account that have a name like Uni, so actually this one wouldn't be caught in that because we're looking at Burlington. Let's go back. Let's look at one of the Uni ones. So from account that is like Uni, which this one would be, that you want to get the ID and name of this account. And then want to get the first 10 contacts that are on this account. And I want their ID, their name, and their email. So we would get Liz's email and name and Tom's email and name. We don't have 10 of them. We only have 2 of them. We'd get those returned. And then if there's any opportunities on this account, we would get a list of those returned, the first 10 of them, their name. And then we would get, if there's any cases on this account, the first 10, we would get the subject and the case number is what we would have returned there. So again, if we kind of just run this, we can see that JSON that gets returned, of course, alphabetical order, right? So here's the 3 cases, or actually this is a different account than what I've got pulled up over here. But this one has, looks like 7 or 8, 7. It has 7 cases, and then it has 4 contacts, and this is the United Oil and Gas Corporation. And then these are the opportunities for that account as well that are all listed out. And then it goes on to the next account that was found in the set. So having these examples, I think, is really a good way to kind of just start kind of learning the context of this and being able to experiment with this within the wizard. And then subqueries where you can start to so this one, we're looking from contact, we're pulling the contact name, phone number, email, we're pulling the contact's account name and annual revenue, where the account has an annual revenue over $500,000, and we want to assort it, to order it by the account name. So if we were to run that, again, here is the name of the contact and his phone number and his email and his ID. So there's that. And then here's the account name and revenue that he's associated with. And this account revenue is over $500,000. And it's being returned in alphabetical order. So there's Burlington Textiles, here's Dickinson, here's Edge, etc. So, again, just kind of starting to compound those SOQL queries that you're doing. All right, moving on to the next thing that you might want to do, which is actually sending information back over to Salesforce. So instead of doing a query call, we're going to be doing something that's called SObjects call instead. And so let's go over here to edit. This button just does a query to get the information for the most recent contact that was added into the org, just so we have something to kind of play and experiment with. And you can see the curl starting to be built over here. So if we wanted to go ahead and change a value here. Basically, we're going to send that in JSON format back to Salesforce using the SObjects call. Basically, it's a patch, right? Instead of queries are going to be gets, in essence. SObjects is going to be patch, put, or delete. So here's the JSON of what that looks like. And again, you can kind of dig into the script that runs that. But if we go ahead and do that, we see what our returned code is on that. And if we go over to contact, what was her name? AV Green. And if we look at AV Green's information here and look at her details, and down here, here's really easy to negotiate with, which is the value that we had just updated there. So we can also go in and create. Here's the JSON data formatting that is going to get pushed over through via the curl. And then we can go ahead and add that success message. We go back to contacts. Here's Ann Kiser that has just been put in here. So that's being done through a put curl statement. And then we can go ahead and load the most recent. And with a delete curl, we can go ahead and delete that person out of here. And Salesforce, you always have to reload. And that user is now gone. So that is, just kind of a bit of a overview. And again, you'll have this file if you would like to use it to set up to authenticate to one of your sandbox orgs, whether you do the free developer one or do it through the Trailhead, and want to start experimenting with it. Start pulling apart any of the scripts or anything. It's full access file, or if you want to integrate that into any of your existing projects or anything that you might need, you've got this available to you. There's some other tabs here about dealing with files and chatter streams and that sort of thing, but this is kind of the overview for you. So that is what I've got for you. Any questions?
Thank you, Ann. Yeah, go ahead.
Nice job, Ann.
Thank you, Mike.
I was curious about error capturing. I mean, your demo gods were perfect, so there's no errors. But imagine I typed in the wrong field name, or something didn't match up. What does what does Salesforce do with that? Is it pretty easy to troubleshoot the errors, or is it more difficult?
Yeah, actually, let me go ahead and share my screen again, and let's make a mistake on purpose, which I did plenty of when I was preparing for this demo. So let's go to query, and let's just do a basic one. Let's copy that, and let's go over to the wizard, and let's put that in here. And not have a correct field name or something like that. So this is what is returned. So invalid field, and no such column shipping on account. So that kind of tells you that the shipping reference that you have here in your SOQL is most likely the errors. Sometimes it can be a little a little hard to find, but it does also give you the reminder that if you're trying to use a custom field to append the _C after the custom field name. So let's try that one. Let's look at account again, and let's find one of the custom fields. So here's a field, number of locations _C. Number of locations. So, this might be a situation where, your customer says, yeah, we want to know the number of locations for this account. And maybe when they're even looking at their Salesforce layout, they're seeing, number of locations as the label, right? Yeah, so here's the number of locations here, and you go, okay, so we just want to query the number of locations field. That seems straightforward enough, but it's going to fail because it doesn't have that double underscore C. So again, it's kind of telling you that number of locations is the issue, and as soon as we put in that double underscore C and rerun that query, it's going to return the expected results.
Yeah, that's really helpful error capturing, I think. So very cool. Let's see, there's a couple other questions in the chat. Let's see, Olin asked, what are the use cases for connecting FileMaker to Salesforce?
It's a good question. I think that they often are two pretty standalone platforms that people use, that people are either using Salesforce or they're using FileMaker. We actually haven't had a lot of customers that are using both of them. A lot of our experience with kind of communicating with Salesforce is because we have a product in Salesforce, and because we do have a product in Salesforce, we use Salesforce for some things internally as well that we do bring across to FileMaker. But there are some organizations out there that might use both for, maybe use one for reporting versus one for their day-to-day or something like that. Or maybe if they're making a transition between the two different platforms, that there would be a use case for that. It'd be interesting to hear what other people have maybe seen or run into as well. Cool. And then I see there's a question about, is this Salesforce to FileMaker available through Salesforce? It's not. This is a file that SeedCode has built, and that we're going to put into the Slack for everybody to be able to use and download and use at however you would like to use it. So yeah, and then being able to see, learn from, and build on the OAuth code. So that's, again, it's going to be all unlocked for you. You can dig into the authorization, how we're going about doing that. It probably will look fairly familiar if you've done other API setups. We do Google APIs constantly, just again, because kind of the calendar tie-in to it, right? And being able to kind of authenticate in and then grab the code and grab the access codes and stuff, may look pretty familiar to you, but you can pull apart and use all of this as you would like.
So
cool.
Following up on that question, so when you allow permission, like when you enabled the OAuth settings in Salesforce initially, that's really all you're doing in order to enable the integration, right? So if you take an existing org, was that the only setting that was being enabled, or are there other permissions where you say, okay, I want to access them only?
Yeah, so the API usage does require a Salesforce license to use it. So you would either need to have, most often, the way that would be set up would be that there would be a API user set up within the Salesforce organization, very similar to when you're setting things up in FileMaker, right? You set up a security account with restricted, potentially with restricted access to what that API has access to. So kind of same thing over in Salesforce. There would be, most likely there would be an API user that would have a set of permissions available. And then when you do go to authorize in, when you authorize, you have to put in the, put in your username and password, essentially, email and password for that account that the API is going to be using to access the Salesforce data. So just, it's a very similar again to, if you were trying to grab information out of FileMaker, you would have to have some sort of security setting, some sort of account that you're authenticating into, and that you can restrict down those permissions and whatnot for that particular use case for the API.